Hey YouTube, Omar here, and on this Monday that we get off from school for Veterans Day, I figured I'd bring you a video. So here you go. This is your Week 11 college football wrap-up, and we start off as usual. We have a little bit of a different format now for all my videos, whether it be a basketball wrap-up, but we'll get to that later anyway, because I have a video coming out just explaining things. Anyway, so we start off with number 1 Alabama going down at home. That's right. Number 15 Texas A&M takes them out, 29-24. Number 2 Kansas State handles business against TCU, 23-10. Number 3 Oregon over Cal, 59-17. Number 4 Notre Dame flexes its muscles on defense, 21-6 over Boston College. Number 5 Georgia shuts out Auburn, 38-0 for a spot in the SEC title game. Number 6 Florida barely survives an upset at Louisiana Lafayette, and they score on that crazy block punt to end the game to win it 27-20. Number 7 LSU defends the Death Valley against number 21 Mississippi State, 37-17. Number 8 South Carolina handles Arkansas, 38-20. Number 9 Louisville goes down, 45-26 at the hands of Syracuse. Number 14 Stanford with a slight upset at home over number 11 Oregon State, although I expected Stanford to win this one, 27-23. Number 12 Oklahoma takes out Baylor, 42-34. Number 13 Clemson rips Maryland indeed, 45-10. Number 16, Nebraska handles Penn State 32-22. Number 17, Texas over Iowa State 33-7. Number 18, UCLA over Washington State 44-36. Number 19, USC over Arizona State 38-17. Number 20, Louisiana Tech in a crazy game over Texas State 62-55. And just a note from that game, in the second quarter, Louisiana Tech scored 27 points and Texas State scored 20. That's ridiculous. 47 points in a quarter. Number 22, Texas Tech needed overtime to beat Kansas somehow, 41-34. Number 23, Rutgers handles Army, 28-7. And number 24, Northwestern goes down in overtime to Michigan in Ann Arbor, 38-31. So let's get to what we learned this week. And the number 1 lesson that we learned, of course, Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel, and Texas A&M. Boy, did they get a big win on the road in Tuscaloosa against the number 1 team in the nation. And really, at times, it just seemed like Manziel wasn't even going up against a defense that is pretty much, in my opinion, the best defense in the nation, and still is. This game doesn't change anything for me. So that leads me to my champ and chump of the week. And my champ of the week is Johnny Manziel himself. Johnny Football was 24 of 31 for 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks, all 18 carries and 92 yards on the ground. Now, how about the chump of the week? I'm sure you might have heard this story. Washington State head coach Mike Leach, after having problems at Texas Tech, I forget why, but whatever it was, now he's having problems at Washington State because his top player, the top player on the team, their top receiver, Marquise Wilson, has just left the program complaining of abusive coaching by not only Mike Leach, but the whole coaching staff. So whether that's true or not remains to be seen. But if it is, I mean, Mike Leach, it's already a mess in Washington State. They played a ranked team this week, so we can actually look. Yeah, they're 2-8 now. They haven't won a conference game. They even lost to Colorado. So it's a mess. He hasn't done his job, and now he's just getting ready to be fired, in my opinion. So what else did we learn besides Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M? And we'll get back to them later. We learned that we have 5 Heisman candidates that are here to stay. I think that the 5 candidates that will be in Times Square at the end of the season are the 5 candidates that are the top 5 right now. And in my opinion, well, not ranking them right now in any particular order, but Manziel, Klein, Lee, Marquise Lee, Monty Te'o, and Kenyon Barner, all I think are the top 5 right now, and all I think will be the top 5 come the night that they announce the Heisman winner. And lastly, the big lesson we learned was teams better start showing up. and I am talking to the Florida Gators and everybody else that has an easy game coming up. Listen to, I mean, they almost got screwed. They were down with 5 minutes left at home in the swamp. They were losing by a touchdown to Louisiana Lafayette. That's unacceptable, and I think it's just that they didn't show up. They were looking ahead to different SEC matchups and didn't see that one. They have Jacksonville State this week at home, so it's much of the same thing. So that's another thing. So I'm calling to every other team and saying, listen, you've got to be aware of this against teams that are going to show up and try to take you out. You can't take it easily. Georgia is one of them. They face Georgia Southern this week. Alabama at home against Western Carolina. Florida, again, Jacksonville State. South Carolina's got Wofford. I mean, these are terrible teams that they're facing because it's big conferences and they never schedule good teams. But yeah, they better be careful. Or else what happened to Florida could be even worse for them, and they could walk out of their own home field with a loss. So now it is time for my updated Heisman top 5, and we start at number 5, and I think number 5 is Kenyon Barner, the running back out of Oregon. Obviously, burst onto my radar. Obviously, I didn't make any videos for the last couple of weeks about football, but burst onto my radar last week after his humongous game. But this week against California, even though the offense put up 59 points, he got injured during the game and actually went to the locker room and still came back and got some carries, but didn't have that great of a day. He had 20 carries for 65 yards and 3 receptions for 35 yards and no scores. So he falls, in my opinion, but still stays in the top 5 just because of not only what he's done this year, but what he can do in the rest of the season with this Oregon offense. Obviously, this week against Cal was the story of Marcus Mariota, who was the weekly leader in passing, 27 of 34 for 377 yards and 6 touchdowns. Next up on my list, who else? Not Mr. Football, but number 4, Mr. Everything, I should say, for Notre Dame, Monty Teo. What can you say? He's just been there all year. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to win the Heisman just for the simple fact that he's a defensive player, and it's just so hard to do it. Only Charles Woodson's done it in history, as you know, and I don't see him doing it, although I'd love to see him win it, but I don't see it happening. I don't really have his stats on here on ESPN, so we'll just know that he had a good game if the defense only gave up 6 points. Next up, number 3 on my list is Marquise Lee, and this guy continues to shine lately. Absolutely on fire for the USC Trojans. This week, USC is only 19, but Marquise Lee has been on a rampage. This week, 10 receptions for 161 yards and a touchdown. Oh, and did I mention he got a couple carries? 6 carries for 66 yards. Yes, this guy is an absolute threat. Unfortunately, the person that we all thought was going to win the Heisman, Matt Barkley, has not been this year for USC. Part of the reason why they suck. Another reason is Lane Kiffin and his terrible coaching. But Barkley threw 3 picks in this game. But Marquise Lee continues to be the story out there in Los Angeles. Now, number 2, and I know a lot of you are going to be complaining about this because you think he should be number 1 after his big game, but no, Johnny Manziel only makes it to number 2 on my list. Sure, he had a huge game. I mentioned his stats earlier on the road against one of the best defenses and the best team in the country, but it doesn't quite get him number 1 right now. But I think he can definitely get there. And number 1, Colin Klein. Still, he's not going anywhere for me this week. He could next week, who knows? But they're playing a Baylor defense that they should score at least 40 on. Kansas State, that is. What do you call it? Colin Klein playing with an injury, so you got to take that into account. Not a very good game through the air. 12 of 21 for 145 yards and a pick, but 50 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Keep him in my number 1 spot for now, but I'll be monitoring him closely because if he keeps having games like that, he will not be staying at the top. All right, next up, the BCS top 10 for this week. In case you haven't heard, number 1, Kansas State. Number 2, Oregon. Number 3, Notre Dame. Number 4, Alabama. Number 5, Georgia. Number 6, Florida. 7, LSU. 8, Texas A&M. 9, South Carolina. 10, Florida State. Now, I made my top 10, and the BCS and I only agree on 4 of the 10 spots. Number 1 is not one of them. This is my top 10, starting from number 10. Number 10, Florida State, just like the BCS, and number 10, South Carolina, just like the BCS. I think South Carolina, even though they have their 2 losses, they're in the SEC, Florida's in the ACC, and that makes a difference. Doesn't really matter. Neither of those teams are going to be competing for a championship no matter what happens. Number 8 is Florida, in my opinion. BCS has them at 6. Yeah, sure, they're a good one-loss team, and you remember, I thought they would go all the way at one point before they lost to who they lose to, LSU or Alabama. I'm not sure, but last week's showing they don't deserve to be in the top 6 or even the top 7 anymore, after just not showing up and just taking Louisiana Lafayette easily and only winning by a touchdown. So they fell to number 8 in my bracket, my top 10. Number 7, Georgia. I don't understand why they're 5 in my opinion. Sure, they're an SEC team with 1 loss, and that's pretty good, but they haven't really impressed me this season. And nothing really flatters me to the point where I want to put them in my top 5. They're at number 7 right now, and on top of that, I put two lost SEC teams in front of them. That's right, I have no shame. Number 6 is LSU, coming off a nice win against Mississippi State. 2 straight pretty good wins, and what can you say? They're always a danger. I think they would beat Georgia head-to-head right now. Number 5, Texas A&M. Yes, they had a humongous win, and yes, I moved them up to where I believe they should be after that kind of win. I'm usually a strong believer that if a team's close enough to another team, such as Alabama, Texas A&M, that team should pass them if they have the same record. Texas A&M has 1 more loss than Alabama at 2 losses, so I'll keep them right behind Alabama, who checks in at number 4. Me and the BCS agree on that one, as well as Notre Dame at number 3, but we have flip-flopped the top 2. Kansas State is not the number 1 team in my opinion. In my opinion, the number 1 team is Oregon. I mean, the only reason why I think Notre Dame isn't in front of Kansas State at this point is because Notre Dame, obviously, they get the season with the hardest schedule. Not debatable. The hardest schedule of any team in the country. And surely you could say, well, if a team runs the table, goes 12-0 against the best schedule in the country, shouldn't they automatically be in the championship? They have not impressed. I mean, they should have lost at Pittsburgh. I think one of these games they're going to lose. I think USC could pose a problem for their defense finally, because the defense has just been so dominant. But, yeah, I have Notre Dame at 3, Kansas State at 2, and Oregon at 1 because they just dominate every single team they step on the field with. This week they have a challenge again at home against Stanford. I see them blowing them out. I don't think anybody is going to stop Oregon at this point, and hopefully they're in the championship game to represent the Pac-12, even though I don't like Oregon, but I think they can really represent us well and possibly even win with Alabama out of the top 3 now. So that's my long college football wrap-up video, over 13 minutes. I'll be coming back with another video tonight, guys. So until then, I'm not sure what video it will be. Maybe just an explanation. Until then, see you guys.